Hello, and welcome back to another episode of The Human Layer. I am Mike Rovin, and in my job, in my role as a service delivery manager for a technology company, I help to bridge the gap between technology and people and humans. And however, the human layer service really can tie into a lot of different roles and jobs and businesses, if not almost all, right? Because almost every business is providing some type of service to a person or a subset of people. My role just happens to be technology, but this could apply to the restaurant business, the trades. If you're an electrician, a plumber, an HVAC, something of that nature, and you're working in those fields, you're providing a service to clients, to customers. And oftentimes, a lot of times, we, rightfully so, our primary focus is the work that we're doing, the thing that we're doing, what we're trying to fix, what we're trying to build, what we're trying to service or support or install, and what have you. And all of that, and we're very fixed on how that goes in terms of relative to the success or the outcome or the successful the the success of the outcomes. Thank you. Words are hard. However, sometimes we maybe prioritize a little bit less the human side of things and forget, or we not forget completely, but just slightly less priority on the fact that there are people on the other side of the work that we're performing, people with feelings and emotions and stuff going on in their lives. And while we think that's not my problem, or that's not really why I'm here, because I'm here to do this thing or provide this service, it is our responsibility to an extent, right? Because it affects the overall partnership, relationship, success of whatever business that we're doing or that we're employed by. And so what I am trying to do is to sort of surface up some of the things I see that we can maybe pay a little more attention to in terms of the human layer, the human side of the work that we're doing, to really help kind of balance out the work, the thing at hand, and the relationships and the people, because that's really where a lot of it is. So we've talked about where, something isn't completely broken, but it just feels off, and being able to kind of bring that up and say something about it. And sort of just recognizing that, because a lot of times we're in conversations and interactions with clients, if you will, and we maybe can feel a vibe, we can feel something's off, maybe something we said didn't land. What do we do in those moments, and how do we address that? Do we address it, and how so we don't miss out on opportunities there? So today I kind of wanted to touch on something that's been swirling around in my brain a little bit too. And I'm going to use the sort of cliche phrase, see something, say something. But that's the kind of the phrase that keeps popping up in my brain in relation to kind of this topic that I wanted to touch on a little bit today. And that is, think about how many times a day or how often we're just going about our work or going about our lives, and we come across something that isn't working maybe as well as it should, or the way that it should, or maybe it's not working at all. And rather than actually stopping in that moment to sort of fix the thing or address what's happening, we kind of go around it. And that could happen for a number of different reasons. That could happen because, we don't want to create friction. We don't want to create a problem. Maybe we don't want to be wrong about something, or maybe we think, well, it's not that big of a deal overall. And so we kind of just go around it. We're all sort of on schedules. We're all sort of paying attention to time. We're sort of trying to move through the steps of our day. And so when sort of these little roadblocks pop up, we're at these crossroads. We have this opportunity to say, do I stop and address this thing that may take me off my course? Or do I just kind of go around it and, well, maybe I'll just kind of leave it for the next person to deal with, or we'll deal with it later. It's not a big deal, right? It kind of feels easier in that moment to just move past it than to address it. But what happens when we reach those things? What happens when we make those decisions? Small issues, right? Little things. It may not be a big deal, right? We can still do the job that we need to do, or the client can still achieve whatever it is that they were trying to achieve, or they can still go about their work. But, it's a small thing. But if that happens repeatedly or over time by lots of different people or in many different situations, small things lead up to big things, right? this also could result in inefficiencies in our workflows, which means it takes more time to do the job that we're doing, which if you look at that on a grander scale, that affects profitability and margins, right? Maybe there's missed opportunities there where we could have an opportunity to say, hey, we see an opportunity to improve, change, and actually do something really good for someone. They say, wow, I'm really glad that you brought that up. That wasn't what I asked you to do, but I'm glad that you found that and you actually said something. And ultimately, this can lead to bigger problems. And a lot of bigger problems start as something small that someone noticed but didn't say something, right? So saying something doesn't necessarily create a problem. It's actually part of caring. It's a part of ownership. And that's really what we're asked to do when our clients or whomever we're interacting with sort of engages us or our services. And so not saying something, it doesn't actually keep things smooth. It doesn't make things smoother. It actually just delays the friction from happening. And so it's one of those things where silence can kind of feel easier, but it's rarely the neutral thing to do. So I guess what I really want to say is there's an opportunity to say something when you see something. And what I see from my role in the service delivery manager side of things is that by the time, as I've mentioned in previous episodes, things get to me, it's a big deal. When clients come to me and say, hey, we're like at a boiling point now. We are reassessing the way we feel about working with you all together. That doesn't happen all the time, but it does happen from time to time. And even in somewhat smaller scales, when we kind of dig those things apart, or even if a client just comes to us and says, hey, this one thing didn't go very well, once we start to peel that back and kind of get to the root cause of things, it's very rare, and I can say this from experience, that it was one sort of big thing or one thing that caused this to happen, right? It's typically a series of things that cause this to happen. Or, if a client or just someone you're in a relationship with finally kind of blows their top and says, I've had it, that wasn't, not always, a lot of times, often, it's not just one thing that caused that, though that can be the case. If you start to really get down to the root cause of the why, typically it's a lot of things that compounded to eventually build up to the big thing that pushed it over the edge. So think about that as you're going about your work, as you're going about your daily interactions and engagements with other people, or just as you're working and you're working in your line of business application or whatever workflows or processes you have through the work that you're doing, or even just what you're doing at home. When you run into something and you say, boy, that's not working the way that it should, rather than just kind of like going around it, try going through it and figuring out some strategies to address it, even just to bring it up, just to say, hey, what if we maybe took a look at this? Or, hey, something doesn't feel right here. If you have someone like me who works for your organization or someone that you can talk to say, hey, listen, I'm working on something. I just happened to notice this. Not sure that this is cool, but if you wouldn't mind, taking a look, I'd love a second opinion. That right there could be an absolute game changer for your client, whomever you're providing a service for, which ultimately just enhances and increases your success and your partnership and your trust as a business. So that's all I got for today, but I want to make sure that I brought that up because it's been something that's on my mind. It's a great sort of takeaway for all of us as we go forward. Again, in these things, in these episodes, in these call outs, I'm not looking to place blame. These are just things that I noticed that I want to bring up and maybe offer some points of view for you to kind of think about and maybe hopefully take into your day to help improve your relationships and your business and your service that you're providing. This is often the stuff that I talked about before that doesn't get sort of written down in tickets. The clients aren't sort of calling the help desk for, but it's stuff that really, really matters. And these are the things that really can tip the scales in terms of relationships. And especially right now in the sort of volatile world we're living in, where businesses are making very different decisions. We're all under a lot of different pressures because of finances and economy and all those things. It's so critically important that we are extra aware of the human layer. And that really can create a whole different experience for our relationship, our business, and the services that we provide. Thanks so much for watching. Please do subscribe to my channel. Please feel free to feed me some other ideas or some feedback that you'd like that I might be able to offer some insight on. And we'll see you next time around on The Human Layer. Thanks.